Disney is a company that lives in all of our hearts and has an essential role in our childhood. From Mickey Mouse and princesses to motion pictures and musicals, Disney has done it all and more. Much like its cartoons and movies that have kept us entertained for decades, the story of how the brand came to be so successful is inspiring. Let's go over the timeline, founder, and the greatest achievement of one of the world's favorite brands together. Stay with us for some stories about Disney and its history that you probably never heard before. Walt Disney Production was founded by brothers Walt and Roy Disney, who were born and raised in Chicago. In 1906, when Walt was only 4 and Roy was 13, their father Elias moved their family of 6 to Marceline, Missouri. It was there that Walt discovered his love for painting and taught himself how to draw by copying and sketching newspaper comics and pictures. His interest grew deeper when he was first paid for his painting of a horse by a doctor in Missouri. From there, he developed his art skills, picking up crayons, watercolors, and oil paintings. In 1911, the family moved to Kansas, where Walt met a friend, Walter Pfeiffer, who introduced him to the world of motion pictures and animations. It was then that Walt became interested in animating cartoons and creating storylines with his drawings. Walt and Roy worked on the Kansas City Times and Kansas City Star's delivery routes, delivering newspapers to around 700 homes every morning before school. What's interesting is that even though Walt would have to wake up at 4:40 every morning for his job and fall asleep or receive poor grades in most classes, he kept the delivery work for 6 years. He used the money to attend art and cartooning classes in order to perfect his skills. Once Elias Disney, the brothers' father, bought a stock in a local company in Chicago, the family moved back to their hometown, where Walt and his brother attended McKinley High School. Walt was cartooning for the school newspaper and taking night classes to learn more art skills and methods. However, Walt Disney didn't see art as a career, and it was more of a hobby for him. In fact, in 1918, he forged his own age on his birth certificate to meet the requirements of joining the army. He was granted a job by the Red Cross driving an ambulance on which he drew some of his cartoons for decoration. However, to his surprise, his drawings ended up making the front page on many military magazines. Once he was back from the army, Walt joined Pesman Rubin Commercial Art Studio as an amateur artist, where he drew art for advertisement, theater, commercials, and other purposes. Once Pesman Rubin Commercial Art Studio's profits were coming to a halt, Walt and another co-worker of his were laid off. Having acquired a good knowledge of advertising, the two decided to join and establish what would be a brief business to make their own cartoons for commercials. However, they both eventually gave up, after not having many customers, to join Kansas City Film Ad Company. This is where Disney's love for animation really developed, and he started working on his own at home. Once he had earned enough knowledge of animations, he and the co-worker from Kansas City Film joined to form an animation production business. The famous Laugh-O-Grams are a product of this cooperation. However, even with Walt's efforts to save his co-owned business with a very time-consuming Alice's Wonderland 12-minute long animation reel, the company declared bankruptcy in 1923. With not much in his pocket and 2 failed companies on his resume, Walt Disney moved to Los Angeles at the age of 18 to be with his brother Roy, who was suffering from tuberculosis. Walt was able to sell Alice's Wonderland, the last production of his Laugh-O-Gram company, to another firm. He also signed a contract to make 6 more of those animations, and so the brothers established their company, and Disney was born. Disney not only moved his family to Hollywood, but he also convinced his friend and former partner in Laugh-O-Gram, iWorks, to relocate to LA and work in what would become the famous Walt Disney Productions. Later in 1920, Walt Disney Studio was officially founded by the 2 brothers to create and sell animated reels. After the success of the Alice comedy series, which involved the main characters Alice, played by Virginia Davis, and the Genius Rabbit, Disney introduced what is pretty much the most famous cartoon character in the world, Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse was inspired by the pet mouse that Walt had supposedly adopted as a teenager, and its name was actually Mortimer Mouse. However, Walt's wife argued it was too heavy a title for a cartoon mouse, so it was changed to Mickey later. Using this character, the studio produced Steamboat Willie, the first cartoon with post-produced sounds. It was with this project that Disney was able to sign a contract with the former Universal Pictures chairman to distribute their work. Having gone really far with the visuals, Disney was determined to strengthen its cartoon sounds as well. So they hired a sound engineer who came up with some great tunes for a lot of their animations. Even though they managed to go really far with all of that, Disney had a fallout with Universal, and Powers, its former executive, no longer wanted to distribute Disney's work. What happened next was not so terrible though. Disney signed with Columbia Pictures as a distributor, and became immediately popular nationally and internationally. Beginning in 1930, Disney introduced new characters like Pluto, Goofy, and Donald Duck. They further perfected their work by starting to produce cartoons in color. Mickey Mouse and the famous Silly Symphonies animation series earned Disney an Oscar for Best Short Film in 1932. The cartoon was such a hit, and it set the foundation for Disney to produce its first film. Even with budget difficulties and challenges with animators, sound producers, and others, Snow White was released after being in the work for 4 years, and in 1937 becoming popular almost instantly. Despite many criticisms from fellow industry members, Snow White became a setting stone to what many at Disney call the golden age of animation. Pinocchio, Dumbo, Bambi, and many other films were released after that. Once the success of animation films was rolling with more hits like Cinderella and Robin Hood, Walt Disney started to take his focus off of the cartoons, leaving it in the hands of the company's animators and focusing on other opportunities. In 1955, after years of development and planning, the first Disneyland was opened in California, and it consisted of a few separate theme parks like Fantasyland, Tomorrowland, and Adventureland, connected together. From there, Disney produced merchandise, more animations, movies, and opened its theme parks in other countries around the world. Walt Disney had accomplished a lot before he was diagnosed with lung cancer. In 1966, after his huge success with Mary Poppins, which won 5 Oscars, and Winnie the Pooh, he died on December 15th. His brother Roy was the official chairman of the company before he died as well in 1971. The company was run by Walt Disney's son-in-law until 2019. Disney has created several great blockbuster movies, musicals, and animations over the years, some of which have won many awards. So what is Disney up to now? How can it possibly become any bigger? Oh, but it can. Disney has now acquired and owns Marvel, Pixar, ESPN, and ABC, all of which were multi-million-dollar companies themselves before Disney bought them out. Today, there are over 12 Disneyland parks, thousands of Disney merch lines, and countless new projects at the works in the company. What began as a young boy taking classes with his hard-earned newspaper delivery money and 2 failed businesses is now a billion-dollar company that has a special space in the world. Disney is the largest animation production company in the world and has produced and released the most popular, lucrative animated films of all time. Be sure to check out our video playlist for more business stories.